It's been a very big day for One Nation and a bad one for the Albanese government. It's not just that the latest Redbridge poll shows One Nation back as the most popular party in Australia, ahead of the government. Look also at the coalition, up 4 points. So some good news there as well for Conservatives. And how lovely to see the Greens, meanwhile, lose nearly a third of their support. Labor would still probably win on preferences, but it should now be very worried that it's managing to throw away the huge majority it won just a year ago. But also significant today were the moves that One Nation made to become more serious. First, the organisational genius of One Nation, you just saw him a few minutes ago, Hanson's Chief of Staff, James Ashby, has appointed someone to replace him, Chris Taylor. Taylor's a very impressive hiring. He has been Chief of Policy of the Australian Banking Association. Before that, was a senior advisor to Prime Minister Scott Morrison. Ashby himself is going to become One Nation's party director, which is a new role. It's going to be overseeing campaigning around the country. He'll play to his particular skills. I mean, this guy's the best political operator I've ever seen. Now, normally, I wouldn't bother you with who's who in the party machines, but this tells you two things. One Nation is becoming a lot more professional, with professional operators prepared to bank their reputation on working for it. And One Nation now has the money to do all that. Now, we also saw One Nation Victoria being made more battle-ready today, up to a point. Victoria is actually One Nation's next big test, the state election there, in less than 4 months. If One Nation does badly there, that's really going to hurt its momentum. And, you know, the latest news poll in Victoria did show it had dropped back to the third most popular party in Australia's reddest state, down to 19%, which is huge for where it was, a couple of years ago, but still less than what it needs. But as I said last week, I mean, what else do you expect when in Victoria it's had no leader, almost no policies, and just one declared candidate? Well, today Pauline Hanson started to change that. She announced One Nation's leader in Victoria would be former Army engineer Warren Pickering, who stood for One Nation in the Senate.
We intend for this to be November to remember, and we are contesting to govern.
Now, Hanson also announced her candidates for Victoria's upper house. The lower house ones will be revealed later. The ones today included a lawyer, an office manager, a Geelong councillor, Chris Burson, former Premier Daniel Andrews, ex-bodyguard, claims to have some secrets, and a human resources manager, plus a guest I'll talk to in a minute. And there was also Pauline Hanson, who used to be a member of the Victorian Liberals Administrative Committee, so quite senior, and is Director of Education Programs at the Institute of Public Affairs.
I'm very comfortable and confident my core values and my principles haven't changed.
So that's not a bad list, but I think Hanson will be a bit disappointed it hasn't got a real star. She actually wanted the Victorian leader to be the former Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, Adam Giles, now top executive of billionaire Gina Rinehart, but he eventually turned her down, which might actually be a smart move because I'm not sure that the Rinehart links would have helped in Victoria. And I have to say that while Warren Pickering is a second choice and largely unknown, he did perform better today than I had expected. He was quite good, actually, despite sweating a bit from the nerves.
It's not lost on us the gravity of this undertaking in Victoria. It's really not. As the boss alluded to, we are on the precipice of social and economic collapse, and anybody who doesn't believe that is simply not paying attention. As such, we've engaged in a concerted effort to cultivate talent from within the community. We are of the firm belief that it's politicians that got us into this mess, and we're sure as hell not going to leave it to politicians to get us out. It's also not lost on us that this is the biggest state campaign in the party's history. As we contest this election to govern what is arguably the most fiscally and morally bankrupt state in Australian history.
Our primary intention will be to deliver a policy document that proves to Victorians that One Nation Victoria can govern in its own right, or at a minimum become the Conservative opposition that's been lacking in this state for a decade, that has been the cause of all our woes.
So yes, it's been around for a while. So a workman-like start today, but it wasn't a barn burner. It wasn't, here's a real camera magnet, apart from Pauline Hanson, and there's still a few policies. But Hanson, she was on blast.
You have escalating crime, you have kids on the streets, you've got, 62% break-ins, carjackings 58%, you've got the problems with the young youth in the state, they haven't been able to control, you've got kids that are dragged through the courts, released on bail to re-offend again, so you've got a real problem in the state. That's why people are not happy with the opposition or the Labor government that have allowed it to get to this stage.
Now, Hanson is so correct about feral Melbourne. I mean, just on the weekend, a bunch of kids out shoplifting, allegedly attacked people that tried to stop them running away. One of the people that tried to stop him, a shopkeeper, 60 years old, 2 children, was allegedly stabbed and is expected to die from his wounds. Victoria Today. Now, Hanson also created the headlines today by banning the ABC and the Guardian Australia from a press conference, as well as the left-wing Age, it turned out, a move that will delight her big donor Gina Rinehart, who's been a real ABC target, another one, Hanson too. Rinehart was vilified in a film that the ABC showed, fantasising about sodomising the billionaire with a stick.
ABC were denied entry into here and The Guardian. I'm not putting up with their rubbish. I'm not putting up with their spin, their lies whatsoever. I want truth and honesty. You get it from me, I expect it back from the media. I'm not putting up with their spin, gotcha moments, wanting to have a go at me or treat us totally different to what you do the other major political parties.
I'm really not so sure about that ban, although heaven knows the bias of the ABC and Guardian in particular has just been too much. I mean, yeah, look, I agree they must be made to pay. And Hanson banning them is another sign of a growing confidence in authority. I mean, journalists are going to grumble about this. One Nation supporters, I think, will cheer. But there's a price, of course, because some voters are going to think that Hanson is running from scrutiny. But she is, of course, undoubtedly correct about Victoria's shocking decline under Labor. Yet for all that, I do think the coalition's going to keep the front running there in Victoria. The coalition will, as Labor's main opposition. One Nation, I think, left it too late to put a team in the field, left a vacuum. Still, it has finally taken the field and should pick up seats, I think, including Labor ones. But nationally, at least, I have to say, Hanson's party is becoming so formidable. And even more frightening for Labor and the Liberals there is that their attacks on Hanson just seem to make her stronger. Ditto the ABCs. Who would have thought that One Nation would just, succeeded like this, overcome all the little setbacks that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks? People who thought it would burst like a bubble are facing instead a juggernaut. And I have to say, after watching Hanson gut the ABC and The Guardian today, the critics who say her party is just about anger and grievance, I'm not so sure. Because I have to admit, One Nation is also just fun to watch, isn't it? As it finally smites the unrighteous.
Quick favour, if you love Australia and want to stay ahead of what is really happening in our country's politics, hit that subscribe button and click the notifications bell. It helps us keep this channel going. More than 90% of viewers have not subscribed yet, and it would mean the world to us if you joined us. Thank you. Now back to the show. One Nation has just been declared the most popular party in the country. Not Labor, not the Coalition, Pauline Hanson's party. According to the latest Redbridge polling, One Nation has surged ahead of both major parties nationally, while the Greens have lost nearly a third of their support. If Australian politics was a Melbourne Cup field, the majors are now looking over their shoulders at a horse that was not even supposed to be in the race. And that is exactly what is making Canberra nervous. This is not the One Nation of 1998, running on passion and photocopied flyers. Something has fundamentally changed. The party has undergone a deliberate strategic professionalisation that transforms it from a protest movement into an institutionally serious political force. Hanson's Chief of Staff, James Ashby, has just been promoted to Party Director, charged with overseeing national campaigning. The new Chief of Staff is Chris Taylor, a former Chief of Policy at the Australian Banking Association and Senior Advisor to Scott Morrison when he was Prime Minister. That is not a fringe appointment. That is someone who understands how power actually works, walking into One Nation headquarters because he believes the party is a credible vehicle,
the political
not a
establishment
protest
has spent
vote.
years telling Australians that One Nation is a flash in the pan, but flash-in-the-pan parties do not recruit senior policy architects from the heart of the Liberal establishment. Flash-in-the-pan parties do not sit atop the national polls with a disciplined ground game in multiple states. Which brings us to Victoria. Do not forget to like and subscribe if you are enjoying this. It genuinely helps us bring you these stories. The Victorian state election is less than 4 months away, and One Nation is now polling at 19%, making it the third most popular party in the state. A new leadership team has been installed under Warren Pickering. Upper house candidates have been announced: a lawyer, a former bodyguard to Daniel Andrews, who claims to hold explosive secrets, and Pauline Hanson, who previously sat on the Victorian Liberal Administrative Committee and directed education policy at the Institute of Public Affairs. That candidate slate looks less like a protest and more like a government in waiting. And while the majors scramble to explain why blue-collar seats and suburban mortgage belts are drifting away, Hanson has also taken a wrecking ball to the conventional media playbook. She has banned the ABC, The Guardian, and The Age from her press conferences. The media establishment predictably called it an assault on press freedom. Her base called it long overdue. Whatever side you sit on, the strategy works on 2 levels. First, it reinforces the us-against-them identity that keeps her core supporters fiercely loyal. Second, it signals confidence. A party that bans major outlets is a party that believes it no longer needs their approval to win. Gina Rinehart, one of the most influential figures in the country, publicly backed the move. That's not a trivial detail. Hanson has built something that neither Labor nor the coalition has fully worked out how to counter. The more they attack her, the stronger the polling gets. Andrew Bolt himself described One Nation as a juggernaut, and he has watched Australian politics long enough to know the difference between a fad and a force. The question now is not whether One Nation can win a seat in Victoria, it is whether the major parties can stop it from becoming the Conservative alternative by default, the party that working Australians turn to when they